Lesson 4.2 is called Translations of the Graphs of the Sine and Cosine Function. And these translations and transformation of the functions, they actually apply to all functions in math class. So when we have a simple function f of x equals sine of x, from the previous class, we know that this is going to look like a graph, looks like this. And then this will be pi and this will be 2 pi. It will hit the number 1 when the angle is pi over 2, and then the y value will be -1 when the angle is equal to 3 pi over 2. So this is the most basic sine function. When we have a function looks like 2 sine of x plus 3, this function is an extended form of the parent function. And then the graph is going to look like this, and we just have to understand the connection. This 2 makes your amplitude 2 times higher. So the graph is going to go 2 times higher than the original one. So it's going to reach to the +2 and -2 here. And then this +3 moves your graph up 3 units. This is the main idea. And then if we just write, what happens is, if I have a question like 2 sine of parentheses x minus pi over 3 plus 5, okay? So when I have a question like this plus 5 at the end is going to move the graph up units, 5 units up. This is called phase shift. If it is minus, it will be to the right. So the phase shift is pi over 3 units to the right. But if it was plus pi over 3, the phase shift was going to be still pi over 3, but it was going to be towards the left. And then this is going to multiply the amplitude by 2. So this is going to cause a vertical stretch. And these are the main idea. When we look at our homework questions now, I am just going to open here some room for future problems if I have any. So for question 1, it says that fill in the blanks to correctly complete the sentence below. So if you have y equals 5 plus 3 sine of x, this is obtained by the shifting the graph of y equals 3 sine of x, some units to some direction. So the main graph here is 3 sine of x, and then we're trying to understand what is this plus 5 going to cause. And then we're going to type that it's going to cause 5 units up. So the graph of 3 sine of x is going to move 5 units up because of this plus 5 here. And then when I look at the next question here now, a similar problem, but this time I have -8 plus 2 cosine of x, and I am going to compare it with 2 cosine of x graph. So I'm trying to understand the effect of -8 at the beginning. So the order does not matter. This -8 can be copied to the end if we would like to. So the shift is 8 units, and because this time it's a -8, it will be shifted 8 units down. For the next question, we're going to compare -4 plus 6 cosine of x minus pi over 6. We're going to compare this graph by the original graph y equals cosine of x. First of all, I see a phase shift here. There's a pi over 6 units phase shift. So I'm going to type pi over 6 units horizontally to the right. Again, if we have negative pi over 6 inside the parentheses, it's going to be towards the right. If it was plus pi over 6, I was going to make it to the left. And stretching it vertically by a factor of, vertical stretch is caused by the 6 at the beginning of the cosine function. So there's a vertical stretch of 6. And then this -4 is going to shift the graph 4 units vertically to the down. These are the all transformations happening in this function. On the homework, question 4, we're going to, for each of these questions, we're going to choose the amplitude, period, and phase shift. To understand how to find the period and amplitude and phase shift for each of these questions, let's just copy them to a bigger space. So we can actually show the work. And here, we're going to copy this. And then I will paste it to the board. For some reason, it's not pasting it. And here's the questions. For each of these, we're going to find the amplitude, period, and phase shift. So if I look at this question 19 here, first thing I have to make sure that I need to put it in correct form. When I say correct form, y equals 5 sine. We are going to factor the 3 from the x. So 3 will be separated from x, and then x minus, since I need to get a total of 2 here, I'm going to put 2/3 here. So 3 times x is 3x. 3 times 2/3 is going to give me a 2. Now, amplitude here will be calculated by looking at this number. So this number always represents the amplitude. That's 5. So the period is, its formula is always 2 pi divided by the number in front of the x. And here in front of x, we have 3. So the period is 2 pi over 3. And then the phase shift is, this number creates the phase shift 2 over 3 to the right. Now, if you look at the next question, again, 3 will be copied, sine will be copied, and 5x minus 2, we're going to factor the 5 out, x, and then we're going to have a minus 2 over 5 here. 5 times x is 5x, 5 times 2 over 5 is just 2. Again, the amplitude is 3. Period is 2 pi will be divided by this time by this number, which is 5. And then the phase shift is 2 over 5 to the right. This one, again, amplitude is always absolute value of this number. So even though the function starts with a -2, this time amplitude is always a positive number because absolute value of -2 is just 2. And then, but before I do that, let's just rewrite the function. I have a -2 sine parentheses. I always have to factor the 5 and then put the x alone minus, I need a 3 over 5 while I'm factoring this. 5 times x is 5x. 5 times 3 over 5 is top 5 and the bottom 5 cancels out and I get a 3. So amplitude is absolute value of this number, which is 2. And period is 2 pi divided by this number, which is 5. And then the phase shift is 3 over 5 to the right. Final question is here. Before we find the amplitude and period, we're going to again rewrite it. -3 sine of parentheses. 2 will be separated, x minus 5 over 2. Let's check my factoring. 2 times x is 2x. 2 times 5 over 2 is just a 5. So amplitude is absolute value of -3, which is basically a 3. Period is 2 pi divided by 2. So the 2's will cancel out. So period will be just pi. And then the phase shift is 5 over 2 to the right. So when you're doing this question on the homework here, you're going to drag and drop the correct answer. So the first one is, its amplitude is 5. And then among these options, this is the only one which has an amplitude of 5. This one has an amplitude of 3. This one is also amplitude of 3. But then this one, the period is 2 pi over 5, but here the period is just pi. So when this one says period is pi, is going to go here. And this one, amplitude 3, and period is 2 pi over 5 goes here. And this is the only one whose period is 2, sorry, amplitude is 2, and period is 2 over 5. And this is how you're going to do question 4 in this homework. For question 5, it's asking us to find the amplitude, period, and any vertical translation and phase shift if it is possible. Amplitude is absolute value of -4, which is +4, and that's how I locate the amplitude. I don't need to factor this one because x is already alone. So we have 1x, so period will be calculated 2 pi divided by 1, which is just 2 pi, which is the same period as the original sine x curve. Now, the vertical translation is, if I had a +5 or -5 after this function, I would have a vertical translation, but in this question, there is no vertical translation here, since after the sine function, there is nothing like plus or minus, so there is no vertical translation. And then the phase shift is pi over 12 to the right. So I'm going to type here pi over 12 to the right. And then this just concludes number 5 on this number. So very similar question here, but this one is different than the previous one because x is not alone. So we have to factor 1 over 5 from the parentheses. So when I see this question here, I am going to just open some room here. And then I am going to type the question they gave me. Y is equal to 3 sine of x over 5 minus y over 5. So y is equal to 3 sine. So the common factor is here 1 over 5. So I'm going to factor the 1 over 5 so I can leave the x alone. And then when I take the 1 over 5 out from the pi, I will just get a pi. Let's just do the verification. 1 over 5 times x is x over 5. 1 over 5 times pi is pi over 5. So this is what we're going to consider while we are answering the questions about this. First, they're asking the amplitude. So amplitude is 3. And the period is, so I can calculate the period 2 pi divided by period formula is 2 pi over b, right? And then this number here is the b. So we actually need to divide 2 pi by 1 over 5. So when I divide 2 pi by 1 over 5, copy the first one, multiply it by the reciprocal of the other one. So this makes our period to be 10 pi. So here on the homework question, I'm going to tell them the period is 10 pi. And the next question is there any vertical translation? Again, there is nothing like +5 or -5 after this function, so there's no vertical translation. And the phase shift is, we're going to locate the phase shift from here. After we factor this number, the phase shift is just pi units to the right. So the phase shift is pi units to the right for this question. Question 7 is the last one on this homework, 4.2. We're going to graph this following function, and the function we need to graph is -3 plus 6 sine of x. When I click on this, enlarge the curve, because the question is sine, so there are two curves. This belongs to sine of x, and this belongs to cosine of x. Because this question is sine of x, I'm going to correct the sign, and I'm going to just drop it here from somewhere randomly. So it doesn't matter where you drop it, it just moves here, and then this window opens up here. Now I need to answer amplitude, period, vertical shift. Amplitude is, because we have 6 sine of x, amplitude is just 6. I'm going to erase this 1, and I'm going to put 6 for amplitude. Because we have just sine of x, 1x, so period stays as 2 pi, because 2 pi divided by 1 is still 2 pi. And then the vertical shift is 3 units down, so I'm going to put -3 is the vertical shift. So we're moving it 3 units down, and the graph automatically changes. Here we don't have any phase shift. I'm going to close this window and then save this. And then when I check my answer, it will mark it right. And this is going to finalize this section 4.2.